Hello and welcome to Getting Your Money's Worth, the show that focuses on value. I'm Judith West, and our guest today is Mark Seitelman, civil law practice, right?
Correct.
So,
yeah.
okay.
Primarily personal injury, representing people against insurance companies, and some other civil matters.
Okay. Thanks for being on the show, Mark. So you represent people against insurance companies, and we've heard a lot about that lately. I want to pose a scenario. In fact, it's not even a pose. It's something that was in yesterday's paper. This show is all over, but this is New York City, and a steel worker fell from a building yesterday in New York City, and he was standing on corrugated steel. You know what corrugated steel is. And it was drizzly, and this corrugated steel was wet, and he was moving a I-beam, a 20-foot I-beam, steel I-beam, and his safety harness was not hooked up to any post or any permanent structure because the building code doesn't require that if you're less than 30 feet high. And he fell, and he's critically injured. Whose fault is that? If he would have come to you, I mean, where does the blame lie, Mark?
Well, in some accidents or incidents, you can't always blame someone in a court of law. Many times, there is no one to blame. Now, let's say you are the injured party and you came to me.
Let's talk about this specific worker. He would have
Yes.
come to you because it was big news yesterday in the paper. And I have to say, unfortunately, New York City has had a rash of construction accidents, so you know it's a very timely topic all over. He came to you. I mean, how would you handle that? How would you? Does he have a legitimate claim against somebody?
Very probably, yes.
Where does the legitimacy lie, Mark?
Okay. Well, first off, he's working. He's on the job, so he would get workers' compensation, which would pay from his employer.
But that's automatic, isn't it?
Well, if you have to be injured on the job,
okay,
doing work, so he'll get his medical paid for and lost income.
But that's automatic. He doesn't have to go to a lawyer for that.
True, but if it's a serious injury, you usually do have to use a lawyer at the Workers' Compensation Board to make sure you get your maximum relief, because many times...
How long can you get workers' compensation?
Well, it depends on the degree of the injury. If you have a total disability, such as blindness, loss of limbs, that's a lifetime benefit. If you have a permanent partial disability, let's say you have a recurrent back problem or chronic low back pain, they changed the law. It used to be a lifetime benefit.
Yeah. Now it's what, 10 years or something?
It's 10 years. They limited it to 10 years.
But you know, I still haven't gotten to the kernel of my question, because
Yes.
I often see what appears to me to be, as a consumer, you know, after all, lawsuits, awards cost all of us. Now, we all share in the expense of that. I often see awards that seem so high compared to what the potential earnings would be of the person. So I'm asking you, when someone slips on corrugated steel that's wet from the weather, where does the responsibility lie? It seems like it's an accident that was waiting to happen, and it did.
Okay. Well, in New York, there's a special law called the labor law, which protects construction workers when they are doing construction or renovation. And it's a very strict law, and it's very limited. It provides special benefits and recovery rights to construction workers who are hurt in accidents. So in this case, right away, if you presented the case to me, a bell would ring. A man fell from an elevated surface.
Right.
There's a special labor law provision called Labor Law 240, Subdivision 1, which protects workers who fall from an elevated surface.
Without regard whose fault it is.
Well, it has to be a defect in the elevation device.
I see.
So it could be, let's say, I have a case where a man was walking on a roof and they just used a piece of plywood to cover a chimney.
Yeah.
Which was basically an open hole on the roof.
Right.
And it wasn't enough, and he fell right through the plywood all the way down the chimney. So you have to show it's a defective elevation
so
device.
All right, so you might even come to the conclusion with this man that maybe something like a corrugated steel, which is rolled and not an even surface, shouldn't be appropriate floor covering, particularly if it's outside and might get wet.
That's very possible. That's very possible.
Right.
There's another provision. So the labor law, if someone falls from an elevation, let's say off a ladder, from a scaffold,
Right.
from a hoist, from a pulley, from an elevator, there's special protections if the elevation device fails. So if you want, let's go back to that famous crane incident.
Now, let's go to the crane incident. As a matter of fact, you have you talk about this in your newsletter. The famous crane accident, which was all over, which turned out to be the fault of what? A defective crane?
The crane was definitely defective. Because the crane is not supposed to topple over.
So is that a responsibility of the buildings department, or is that a responsibility of the crane operator?
Well, you're looking at it. Depends from whose viewpoint you're talking about. Now, let's look at
from the outside, not the lawyer's point of view or the building department point of view, but just from any citizen USA.
Yes. Well, that's sort of a different viewpoint. I guess you have three ways to look at it. Right. Now, we have the viewpoint of the general public, making sure the streets are safe.
And that's right. And that's who we're talking to right now. So,
we have the general public. That would fall under the buildings department.
And some of the general public got hurt in that accident.
Okay. Now, if they're hurt or have property damage and need to go to the courts, then we're looking at a different set of facts and different set of laws.
Because they're now injured general public.
Now, there were 6 workers who were killed by the crane, 6 construction workers. They would be covered under that special protection, the labor law section 240, subdivision 1, because an elevation device failed, was defective. So either the men that fell with the crane would be protected, they don't have to prove negligence, or the men who had the crane fall on them or debris fall on them, they are covered. Now, you had one person who was a visitor from out of town who unfortunately was visiting the townhouse.
Exactly.
She just happened to be an innocent person that visited the townhouse.
And it was her bad luck.
Right, and the building was demolished. It was flattened like a pancake.
Right.
She doesn't have the protection of the labor law section 240, subdivision 1. It's only for construction workers.
So where does her protection come from?
Unfortunately, she died. So her state would have to sue in negligence, but they probably be able to prove negligence. I don't think it's going to be a problem.
I don't think it's going to be a problem. So I want to ask you something. And
just getting back to the labor law, it protects construction workers because the legislature recognized that construction work is dangerous.
It's dangerous, right.
And the construction worker doesn't control the workplace. It's up to the owner or the general contractor to control the workplace. And often the general contractor will tell his worker, go out and work. You don't work, you're not going to get paid.
Right. So if something happens on the work side and compensation kicks in, whether it's however it is working, is that contractor or the owner of that contract company, is he penalized for forcing working in dangerous conditions or not checking the workplace? Does he get penalized?
Okay, well, he gets penalized as far as a lawsuit by an injured worker or a bystander. His insurance premiums would go up.
Right.
Or maybe the insurance company won't write him, so he'll have to go outside of the New York market.
I guess where I'm going to is, where do the interests of the general public come in to protect the general public's pocketbooks, that they don't have to wind up paying for awards that should have been the responsibility of somebody else?
Probably the lawsuit, the private civil lawsuits are probably the best police to make sure that a work site is safe. Now, the Department of Buildings, I don't really handle the administrative end of the building process. I mean, if a work site is unsafe, the Department of Buildings will shut down the site.
We hope.
We hope. And the owner could be placed in the bankruptcy.
We hope.
Well,
or we hope that something happens to them anyway.
Right. The owner will suffer financial consequences because his loans will be running and he can't build. and he won't complete his project on time.
What is the position? And I know you are, when you're hired to be the advocate for whoever's hiring you, and we get that. That's the lawyer-client relationship. But what is your position about putting a cap on awards? Sometimes the jury gets carried away, and the caps and the amount awarded sounds like a very unreasonable amount. And again, all of us, general public, all of us, we're talking about getting your money's worth, have to wind up paying for it in some way, increased building costs or whatever. Should there be a cap on awards, Mark?
No, there shouldn't be caps on awards because, the people who want caps, the tort reform lobbies and interests, the insurance interests, the owners.
And a lot of people, the public, would like to see tort reform.
Well, generally, people in the upper income areas who are more allied with those interests of owners, businesses. The problem with caps is it's sort of draconian and covers everyone.
Right.
And doesn't take in consideration other factors. So the biggest, and juries, there's a myth that juries just run amok. It's not really true because once a jury gives an award, let's say it's a high award, the defense moves before this trial judge to have the award reduced or the whole verdict thrown out. And then it can go to an appellate court. So it generally goes through a few hands. So when you hear of a very high award in an outrageous case...
Doesn't mean it happens automatically.
No. Now, if there's like an award of $40 million, you can be guaranteed it gets appealed and it will go through the court process, the appellate process, and it gets knocked down considerably.
Right.
And many times when someone is awarded future damages, they're not given, let's say the jury says, we're going to award $5 million in future damages, future lost income. That person's not getting $5 million. It will be annuitized, so they're getting a much lower amount. Right. The court will annuitize it.
The system holds up. We can have faith in the system.
I believe so.
Yeah.
And to take the example of that construction accident or the construction accidents that we've had, the labor law gives construction workers certain safety, or at least an umbrella of certain safety, that if they're terribly injured and can't work, or if they're killed, heaven forbid, they will be provided for. Their case will be tried mainly on the issue of damages, because a lot of cases are very close issues. So this takes the issue of negligence out of the case.
Right, because as you say, I mean, certainly the person who's injured, or the person, God forbid, who is permanently disabled, certainly has a right to some recourse. There's no discussion about that.
Well, they might not have always a lawsuit. I mean,
they may not have a lawsuit.
No, they might be restricted solely to workers' compensation.
Exactly, but that's still a form of recourse.
Yes, but workers' compensation is a limited recourse. Yeah. They pay now, I believe it's a maximum of $500 a week, lost income, and they pay your medical. You're not going to go rich out, and many people end up going bankrupt on it.
Right. It's good to know, though, that we have folks like you and building departments who watch out for that piece of our industry, our commerce here, because after all, we need construction, and folks do have, as you say, they have limits when they're working on jobs. Thanks for being on the show, and you couldn't have come in a more timely manner. All this news. I'm Judith West. Thanks for watching Getting Your Money's Worth.